This critique focuses on a script exploring the phenomenon of epic dreams, highly immersive and continuous dream states experienced by a rare minority, examining their psychological, creative, and philosophical implications.
The opening relies on conventional, platform-specific engagement phrases that undercut the profound and mysterious atmosphere the script successfully builds later.
Yeah.
I mean, right out of the gate, the meta-commentary just breaks the immersion for me.
The algorithm stuff?
Exactly. The script actually starts by mentioning that viewers might, click away after 2 minutes, and it makes this joke about how the creator's other videos aren't exactly breaking the internet.
Right.
When you pull the audience into the gritty, desperate mechanics of content creation and algorithmic anxiety,
It's a clash.
it completely clashes with the cinematic, deeply personal, and highly unusual nature of these epic dreams. You're trying to talk about an incredible 1% phenomenon, but voicing these retention anxieties just cheapens the profound subject matter before it even gets off the ground.
I can definitely see what you're saying about the tonal clash there, but let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
We both know how punishing algorithms can be. Creators are terrified that if they don't do the whole song and dance about audience retention and setting expectations, people actually will click away.
Oh, absolutely.
So, isn't there some value in being self-aware and, conversational with the audience right at the start?
There is value in building rapport, absolutely, but not at the expense of your core narrative. A much stronger approach would be to adopt a fully immersive, narrative-first hook that drops the listener immediately into the mystery of the topic. You want to maintain that authoritative and wondrous tone you use so beautifully in the middle of the piece.
Right, you want the tone to match.
The tone has to match the gravity of the subject matter from the very first syllable. Otherwise, you're telling the audience not to take it seriously.
Okay, that makes sense. You basically have to earn that retention with the story itself.
Exactly. And just to throw out a few concrete ways you could tackle this, look at the sensory prompt that's currently buried down in the second paragraph.
The one about closing your eyes?
Yeah, it says, close your eyes for a moment, think about last night. What if you just moved that right to the very front?
Oh, I see.
By bypassing the creator's anxieties and starting there, you force the listener to immediately engage with their own consciousness.
I love that. It creates this beautifully calm, introspective stage. It's almost hypnotic,
Yes.
which perfectly prepares the mind for the heavy concepts about sleep and alternate realities that follow. But what if the creator wants something a bit punchier? Something that really grabs you by the collar?
Then you could start in medias res. Picture this. You open by vividly describing one of those visceral dream scenes right off the bat, before the audience even knows what the topic is.
Just drop them right in.
Right. You describe a person who has been visiting the same city for 12 years. You talk about them knowing the street names, navigating the subway system, and, I love this detail from the script, participating in a mayoral election, because the previous mayor passed away.
I read that and couldn't believe it.
It's wild.
I mean, my normal dreams involve me realizing I forgot to study for a math test I took 15 years ago, and my shoes are somehow made of cheese.
Cheese shoes, exactly.
And it lasts 5 chaotic minutes. But here, you're painting this incredibly detailed, bizarre picture of a waking life, zoning disputes, local politics, navigating public transit.
And that's exactly why it works as a hook. You lay out this 12-year history, and only after the audience is completely invested in this strange parallel life, you pull back the curtain and explain that this entire world exists entirely inside someone's sleeping mind.
Wow, yeah, the material makes a strong case for how astonishing these worlds are just by highlighting those highly specific details. Opening with the 12-year mayoral election proves the premise instantly.
It really does.
You aren't just promising the audience a fascinating topic. You are actively demonstrating the scale of an epic dream. It creates immediate suspense.
Precisely. Now, there's another spot later in the script where this same total issue pops up.
Where's that?
The text asks the audience to drop a comment below to build a community space.
Ah, the engagement call to action.
Yeah, it's another one of those community-building interruptions that completely shatters the narrative spell. If I were rewriting this, instead of using standard engagement phrasing, I'd try validating the audience's experience directly within the narrative.
How would that sound in practice?
You could say something like, if you live these parallel lives, you already know the isolation of waking up to a world that doesn't understand.
Oh, that's much better.
Doing it that way fosters a genuine connection. It validates their rare experience, and ironically, it will probably generate way more comments than just asking for them, all without breaking the fourth wall.
So a key theme running through this material seems to be the delicate balance between capturing attention and respecting the sheer weight of the subject.
Absolutely.
Those adjustments definitely ensure the opening tone remains elevated. Let's look closely at the section discussing the biological underpinnings of these dreams.
The science section.
Right. As I understand it from the notes, there's a segment billed as quick science. The text briefly mentions REM sleep, the intense firing of the visual cortex, and the partial activation of the prefrontal cortex in epic dreamers. And then, practically in the next breath, it pivots to historical anecdotes about Mary Shelley writing Frankenstein.
The script introduces fascinating neurological concepts regarding REM sleep and the prefrontal cortex, but glosses over them too quickly to fully satisfy a deeply curious audience.
It is very fast.
The real stumbling block here is that the science is explicitly framed as a quick aside. The text briefly mentions the logic centers shutting down in a normal brain, contrasts that with the partial activation for epic dreamers, and then just moves on.
Just jumps right to the history.
Yes, because the script leaps almost immediately from this glossed-over neuroscience into historical anecdotes about Mary Shelley and Paul McCartney. The biological mechanism that makes these incredible dreams possible feels like an ungrounded stepping stone rather than a solid, convincing premise.
I can kind of see why the author might have rushed through it.
What's that?
Well, neuroscience can be incredibly dry if you aren't careful. You don't want a script about the magic of dreams to suddenly sound like a 200-level biology lecture. Mary Shelley is a sexy, universally recognizable anecdote. Isn't it safer to lean on the history rather than getting bogged down in brain anatomy?
It's only a risk if the science is poorly explained.
Fair point.
The biology is the very thing that validates the magic. My recommendation is to deepen the scientific explanation by drawing explicit functional connections between those brain mechanics and the specific, unique traits of epic dreams you outlined earlier.
The traits being the consistency, the complexity, and the continuation.
Exactly.
So rather than just name-dropping the prefrontal cortex, you actually put it to work in the script.
Precisely. For instance, you could expand specifically on how that partial activation of the prefrontal cortex allows for narrative coherence across weeks. What exact biological function is the prefrontal cortex performing to maintain the layout of a fictional city day after day?
That's a vital question. If you detail the functional role, maybe how the prefrontal cortex manages working memory or spatial mapping, you turn a vague biological reference into a structural pillar of the argument.
Exactly.
It grounds the surreal nature of the dream in physical reality. But going back to my earlier worry, how do we do that without it sounding like a textbook?
That's where we bring in imagery. Another way to tackle this is to contrast the epic dreamer's brain with the logic center shutdown of normal dreams by using a specific visual metaphor.
Okay.
Think about your cheese-shoe dream. You could compare a normal, chaotic dream to an improvisational play with no script, where actors just run wild, the sets fall apart, and people constantly morph into different characters.
Right. Total anarchy.
Exactly. In contrast, an epic dream is like having a seasoned film director representing the prefrontal cortex stepping onto that chaotic set.
Oh, I like that.
The director starts barking orders, organizing the random, chaotic firing of the visual cortex into a cohesive, logical timeline.
I love that descriptive line. It takes the abstract neurological concept of partial activation and creates a vivid, incredibly accessible mental.
It does the heavy lifting for you.
You can almost see the director shouting action amidst the absolute chaos of REM sleep, forcing the narrative to adhere to the rules of physics and character continuity. It bridges that gap between heavy neuroscience and the cinematic quality of the dreams perfectly.
And once you've established that physical reality, you can take it a step further into the emotional reality. Is the connection between the physical brain and the emotional fallout fully established in the material?
You think it needs more?
I think that's an area to potentially bolster.
How so?
Well, as a third option to ground the science, you could reference how the brain builds genuine neural pathways for these fictional places and people.
Neural path.
Right. Use that biological fact to explain exactly why mourning a dream character feels identical to waking grief. If the neural pathways are structurally the same, then the grief is not a metaphor. It is a biological reality.
That is fascinating. Tying the brain anatomy directly to the emotional fallout makes the science feel indispensable to the narrative. It proves to the audience that this isn't just trivia. It's the fundamental reason these dreamers experience such profound real-world loss. It anchors the empathy in biology.
Which naturally brings us to the final act of the script.
Yes, let's look at how the script wraps up. The material moves from discussing these deeply psychological purposes of dreams. There's an incredible story of a woman dreaming of a flooding city to process her mother's terminal illness.
Such a powerful story.
And another about a man rebuilding a ruined metropolis to mirror his waking recovery from addiction. But then, the script shifts gears into a highly philosophical segment discussing the brain in a vat, simulation theory, and the fundamental nature of consciousness.
The transition from the psychological purpose of epic dreams to the existential philosophical discussion creates a jarring tonal shift that disrupts the narrative momentum.
It really is a hard pivot.
The issue here is that the script moves so abruptly from deeply emotional, grounded human case studies into broad, abstract thought experiments. Segregating these concepts dilutes the profound emotional resonance established in that psychological section.
I felt that too.
The audience is deeply invested in this human struggle, the woman processing her mother's death, and suddenly they are pulled out of that raw emotion and placed into an academic lecture on consciousness.
I noticed that whiplash too. It almost feels like two different videos stitched together. But at the same time, the philosophical questions are the natural endpoint of this topic, right?
Sure.
The simulation theory stuff, the idea of what constitutes reality, that's massively popular right now. So we shouldn't just cut the philosophy, should we?
No, absolutely not. The philosophy is essential, but it's all about the delivery. A stronger approach would be to weave those philosophical questions about the nature of reality organically into the psychological case studies.
Integrate them?
Yes. You use the emotional weight of the human experiences to anchor the abstract existential concepts, rather than tacking them on as a detached, concluding chapter.
So bringing the academic down into the personal.
Exactly. Let's look at how that might play out. Remember the dreamer who mourned the destruction of a 10-year dream saga?
Yes, they woke up feeling like their childhood home had literally burned down.
Right. When you are discussing that specific story, you can seamlessly introduce the philosophical concept right there.
Okay, so what I really like about this part is the raw emotion of that loss. To integrate the philosophy there, instead of saving it for a separate chapter, you could ask the audience in that very moment. To the brain, wasn't this loss as real as waking reality?
Spot on.
You're grounding the massive philosophical question of what is real right inside the tears of someone mourning a fictional city. It makes the philosophy deeply empathetic.
That's it exactly. And building on that, think about the Shakespeare quote used later in the script. We are such stuff as dreams are made on.
A classic.
Right? Now, it's just floating out there in the abstract philosophical section. But what if you integrated that quote directly into the segment about the person leading a revolution in their dreams to escape an abusive relationship in their waking life?
Oh, that's incredibly powerful. You place Shakespeare's words right next to that survivor story.
Right. And then you ask the audience, which version of their bravery is the real one? Is the quiet, conflict-averse waking person the reality, or is the confident, revolutionary dream self the reality?
It gives the philosophy actual teeth. It creates suspense and focuses on the protagonist's challenges and growth. The philosophical question isn't just an intellectual exercise anymore. It becomes a mirror for human resilience and identity.
Exactly.
But what about the heaviest concept in the script, the brain in a vat? You know, that classic philosophical dilemma of whether we're all just a brain hooked up to a simulation, being fed false reality. How do you integrate something that inherently academic into a personal story without it sounding clunky?
That's a great question. And I wonder if we've considered completely reframing how that theory is introduced, rather than presenting it the way philosophers usually do as a sterile academic thought experiment devised in a classroom. Frame it entirely through the lived experience of the epic dreamers themselves.
How do you mean?
Well, these are people who already feel they exist in two realities simultaneously. Think about it from their perspective. They wake up missing their dream friends. They mourn dream cities. And when they finally fall asleep, their waking life feels distant and hazy.
That's so disorienting.
It is. If you frame the brain in a vat thought experiment as a natural, unavoidable conclusion of their daily psychology, it doesn't feel like a separate academic topic. It feels like the only logical conclusion to the human evidence you've been presenting for the last 10 minutes.
I see. Because for an epic dreamer, they essentially are the brain in a vat every single night.
Yes.
Their physical body is paralyzed in bed, but their mind is living a full, tactile, emotional life in a simulated world constructed by their own prefrontal cortex.
Exactly. When you frame it through their eyes, the listener doesn't feel like they've started watching a completely different video halfway through. It creates a seamless, devastating flow from the psychological trauma right into the existential questions that naturally arise from dealing with that trauma in a hyper-realistic state.
That's a brilliant way to synthesize all the moving parts of this script. It honors the science, it respects the emotional weight of the subjects, and it delivers on the philosophical promises without ever breaking the spell of the narrative.
It brings it all together beautifully.
To concisely recap her discussion today for the author, first, elevate the tone of the opening. Drop the platform-specific meta-commentary about the algorithm and retention. Instead, start in media res with that stunning 12-year mayoral election, or use a strong sensory prompt to immediately immerse the audience in the gravity of the topic.
Absolutely.
Second, ground your narrative by fleshing out the biological mechanics of the prefrontal cortex. Don't just gloss over the science to get to Mary Shelley. Justify the extraordinary claims you're making by utilizing a visual metaphor like the film director organizing the chaotic improv actors of the visual cortex to really explain what partial activation looks like in practice.
Make the science work for you.
And third, improve the narrative flow by weaving the massive philosophical concepts like the nature of reality and the brain in a vat theory directly into the emotional, psychological case study. Don't isolate them in a detached concluding chapter. Let the philosophy arise naturally from the tears and triumphs of the dreamers themselves.
I genuinely enjoyed exploring these concepts. The foundation you've built here is absolutely fascinating, and I want to warmly invite you to apply these structural and tonal adjustments to the script and submit the revised material back in for another round of feedback. There is so much incredible potential in this piece, and continuing to refine these areas will make the final work truly unforgettable. We are very excited to see how it evolves.